Thanks for joining us for CBN News Today. I'm Charlene Israel.
And I'm from Graham. A rare winter storm has stunned the South. It dumped up to 2 feet of snow in some areas. The bitter cold and ice triggered hundreds of accidents and killed at least 2 people. The weather even forced some elementary school teachers and students to spend the night in their classrooms. This is the second snowstorm to hit the South in the last week.
And the thing about driving around in here is people down south don't know how to drive in it, you know.
The massive storm stretches 1,000 miles from Mobile to Maryland. Atlanta only saw 2 to 3 inches, but that was enough to throw the Peach City's entire freeway system into gridlock, and some stranded motorists simply ditched their cars and walked home. Georgia State Patrol responded to more than 900 crashes throughout the state, with at least 1 fatality and more than 100 injuries.
I'd advise if you ain't got to be out, stay at home.
3 to 5 inches of snow and ice triggered accidents along the interstate in Raleigh, North Carolina, where the governor declared a state of emergency.
Seems like it's icy, so I definitely didn't want to swerve, and then I stopped, so the person behind me ran right into me.
The weather is being blamed for hundreds of accidents across North Carolina. Just outside Asheville, a school bus flipped over on icy roads, sending 1 student to the hospital.
Real scary, I mean, because the whole bus tipped over and I was sitting in the seat on the other side and just kind of flew to the other side.
The bitter cold and snow have forced schools across the South to cancel Wednesday classes. But in Birmingham, Alabama, teachers and students at one elementary school are waking up in their classrooms because the roads were simply too dangerous for buses or parents to get them home on Tuesday.
If you trust your teacher to take care of your child during the day, they will be taken care of tonight.
This winter weather has also grounded thousands of flights, and the snow is expected to stick around because the wind and cold aren't letting up, even after the snow has stopped falling. Now, at least in the Northeast, that brutal cold is expected to ease up by the end of the week, and that is just in time for Sunday's Super Bowl, which is being held in New Jersey.
President Obama is vowing to bypass Congress and solve America's economic problems using executive powers. In his State of the Union speech last night, he outlined a vision of opportunity for all. But his White House correspondent Jennifer Wishon reports the question is, who's listening?
On a bitterly cold night, President Obama entered the House chamber in a precarious position. His approval numbers at nearly record lows. Mr. Obama explained why he wants to go it alone more often.
Wherever and whenever I can take steps without legislation to expand opportunity for more American families, that's what I'm going to do.
And he's already moving. With the stroke of his executive pen, the president plans to help the long-term unemployed, encourage retirement investments, and raise the minimum wage for new federal contractors to $10.10 per hour.
Because if you cook our troops' meals or wash their dishes, you should not have to live in poverty.
It's troubling because it's a violation of the spirit of the Constitution, if not a violation of the Constitution itself. And it's inappropriate for the leader of the greatest nation on earth to say, I'm going to act on my own, whether you like it or not.
The president presented old and new ideas, but the question is, has he lost his audience? Coming off a disastrous rollout of Obamacare, the key achievement of his first term, new polling suggests a majority of Americans lack confidence in the president to make the right decisions for the country.
They're frustrated because they want more jobs, not more programs. They're frustrated because they want the president and Congress to listen to them more and the NSA to listen to them less. And they're frustrated because they know you don't fix all the problems with Obamacare by just tweaking some website.
Anticipating November's midterm elections and acknowledging problems the GOP is faced with female voters, House Republicans picked Congresswoman Kathy McMorris Rodgers to deliver the Republican response. A mom from Washington State, she's the highest-ranking woman in the Republican House leadership.
I'd like to share a more hopeful Republican vision, one that empowers you, not the government. It's one that champions free markets and trusts people to make their own decisions, not a government that decides for you.
While the president's promise to take more executive action has irritated some Republicans, there were signals Congress can work with him in the coming months on tax reform.
Let's work together to close those loopholes, end those incentives to ship jobs overseas, and lower tax rates for businesses that create jobs right here at home.
He's spending the rest of the week on the road promoting his vision. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Capitol Hill.
More on the State of the Union and the president's agenda is Bill Frenzel. He's a fellow at the Competitive Enterprise Institute, and he's the host of a new radio program called Real Clear Radio Hour with Bill Frenzel. Bill, we heard from the president, but from your perspective, what is the state of our union when it comes to our economy and economic freedom?
Well, we're at the end of a period of monetary illusion. The Fed has gone on a money printing binge, which is about to end. We're going to become weaning ourselves from that monetary cocaine, and we're going to see the effect. The stock market is already starting to waver. We've got a false illusion of recovery through economic statistics of GDP growth that are very suspect and inflation statistics that are very suspect. The American economy is hurting. It's stopped growing. Unemployment, if measured properly, is at an all-time high. In the last, certainly in my lifetime, it's at an all-time high. The labor participation rate is at an all-time low since before my college days. And I think it's going to be a long time before we get back on our feet, and that's not going to happen until the boot of the federal government gets off the economy's neck.
Wow. The president wants to double down on fixing income inequality. What's the best way you think to help those who are disadvantaged in our society?
History has proven time and time again that the way you help the poor most is through growth. What they need is jobs, not food stamps. What they need is an opportunity to get on that first rung of the economic ladder where their labor is not worth very much, and then climb that ladder through hard work and diligence and education. By preventing them from getting that first job through unemployment insurance, by incentivizing them not to look for work through things like food stamps and welfare, we're not helping the poor, we're keeping them down.
We know Obamacare was supposed to help the poor, but so far it has hurt many middle-class Americans who've lost insurance or they'll be paying considerably more. What kind of impact will it have in the coming years?
It's actually worse than that. It's not just what it's doing to the cost of insurance. It's what it's doing to the employment situation. You got all sorts of gyrations going on now in small and medium-sized businesses trying to avoid the bite of Obamacare. You've got extra taxes that are being loaded on through the economy in hidden ways because of the ways they're trying to finance Obamacare. It's going to be very difficult to unwind the damage that's being done, and it's hard to see what the next step is going to be because the government is gridlocked at the current time.
We've heard the president say he's got a pen and a phone, and he plans to use his executive powers to raise minimum wage for federal contract workers to more than $10. Will that affect the economy?
In a very, very marginal way. I'm sure there will be a few people who will get raises. There'll be other people who will become unemployed because the contractors won't be able to hire them, and the federal deficit will go up because the government will have to spend more money for services and for projects. What the president can do with his pen and his phone right now is position his party to minimize the losses they're going to face in the midterm elections. He's lost his ability to influence legislation. His party is at war with itself. The pragmatists and the centrists in the party very much want to triangulate back to the center and rediscover the success that Bill Clinton had when he was governing. And the fringe of the party, Elizabeth Warrens and the class warriors, are trying to pull the president to the left to turn this into a progressive rallying point. And I'm actually hoping they do that because I think the voters have had enough of it.
We've seen the size of our government and our national debt skyrocket under the president. Can America still be a land of opportunity in light of those two factors?
Not in light of those two factors. I mean, America can always recapture its place at the top of the pile of economic freedom. We're not even in the top 10 anymore, which is a disgrace that we've fallen that low. It's a simple matter of going back to the basic principles that made our country great, limiting the size of government, getting rid of the excess regulations, reining in the terrible, I would almost call them egregious violations of the rule of law that have been growing under this administration, where they're pretty much making things up as they go along, each time trying to fix a mistake they made previously and just compounding the situation. All that uncertainty has frozen the market. You've got large companies sitting on cash, not investing in growth, not investing in capital equipment. The best you're going to see is they're buying back their stock, was just fueling the stock market bubble. This is not a recipe for growth.
All right, Bill Fresler, the Competitive Enterprise Institute and radio host now. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Americans are pessimistic about the future of the country. In a new NBC Wall Street Journal poll, more than 60% say the country is heading in the wrong direction. 68% think the country is either stagnant or worse off since President Obama took office. And 81% say they disapprove of Congress. When describing the work taking place in Washington, the words used most in the survey were divided, troubled, and deteriorating.
Hundreds of supporters and opponents of same-sex marriage held rallies at Utah's state capitol Tuesday. Lawmakers will soon take action on a new bill after a federal judge ruled the state's voter-approved law on same-sex marriage is unconstitutional. Gay marriage supporters say the climate is changing in their conservative state.
We believe that the world has evolved and it is bending toward justice.
But traditional marriage supporters, such as Doug Mainwaring, who left his gay partner and returned to his wife, says it will undo marriage and confuse children.
And my fear is that if we redefine marriage, we won't be really redefining it, we'll be undefining it.
More than 1,000 same-sex couples married in Utah after the judge overturned the ban.
New measures in South Dakota aim to protect pastors and Christian business owners who refuse to take part in gay weddings. The two bills have just been introduced in the state legislature. They would prevent lawsuits in cases where clergymen or business owners cite religious beliefs for not participating in same-sex marriages or receptions. The measure's main sponsor is State Senator Ernie Otten. He says a baker shouldn't be sued for not making a cake for a gay couple. The South Dakota Constitution and state law currently ban gay marriage.
Military chaplains and Christian service members are being punished for their beliefs on traditional marriage. That's what the Chaplain Alliance for Religious Liberty told Congress Tuesday. It gave many examples, like a service member reprimanded for expressing his religious position on homosexuality in a personal blog. A chaplain relieved of his command for refusing to allow same-sex weddings at a military chapel. And an Army Equal Opportunity officer listed Christians and ultra-Orthodox Jews as religious extremists like the KKK and Al-Qaeda in a presentation. The new Defense Authorization Act requires the military to accommodate religious beliefs, but the Obama administration is opposing those protections.
Secretary of State John Kerry is calling on North Korea to free imprisoned American Christian Kenneth Bae. Kerry met with Bae's family Tuesday. Bae is serving 15 years for anti-government activity. A State Department spokesman said Bae and his family have apologized for the acts that led to his imprisonment. He's in poor health, but North Korea has given no sign it will release him.
Coming up,
you use 11 pounds of this metal every year, and without it, your car won't start. See why the government is getting the lead out and what it means for our lives.
Well, you might not know it, but you use lead every day. It is an essential part of your life, and you never even think about it.
That's right, but now America is losing its only remaining primary lead smelter because of EPA regulations. And as Caitlin Burke reports, we could all soon feel the impact.
Most people think of lead as a toxic metal. Too much exposure in the air, water, or food can be extremely dangerous. The EPA highlighted some of the health risks in a statement to CBN, saying, quote, "Ingestion of lead at high levels can cause convulsions, coma, and even death. Lower levels of lead can cause adverse health effects on the central nervous system, kidney, and blood cells. Even very low levels of lead in the blood of children can result in permanent damage to the brain and nervous system, slowed growth, and anemia."
But lead is also a valuable resource, essential in many of the products we use every day. Its most common use is batteries like this one. Without it, your car wouldn't start.
Lead also helps protect our society. Lead aprons shield patients from X-rays. It's used in ammunition, and also provides a safety barrier around nuclear reactors. Whether you know it or not, you use 11 pounds of lead every year. But as of this year, there will be far less lead available to meet a growing demand because of tighter EPA regulations.
they essentially dropped the ambient air standards for lead by tenfold.
In order to meet those new standards, companies either spent millions on upgrades or shut down. Doe Run was one of those companies. It put $25 million in environmental improvements into the Herculaneum smelter, the last place in the country that could take lead from the ground and process it. But that wasn't enough. So on December 31st, the Herculaneum smelter closed its doors, meaning the U.S. could no longer turn ore into 99.9% pure lead. And now, only secondary or recycled lead will be available.
In operation for 120 years, the Herculaneum smelter produced 8 to 10% of the demand for lead in the U.S. Now all primary lead will have to come from foreign sources.
As a company, we will still provide lead concentrate that can be turned into primary lead. However, that lead concentrate will be sent to other countries, mostly in Europe and Asia.
China is expected to be where much of that lead concentrate ends up. But Doe Run says that once it leaves the U.S., it's unlikely we'll be getting it back, because China will have its own uses for it.
We all know that most of the raw materials that go into China don't return in that format. They're either used by the country itself to develop their infrastructure or turned into finished goods.
The folks at Doe Run acknowledge both the health and environmental dangers of lead and have even pursued a clean alternative to high-temperature smelting.
It's actually a hydrometallurgical process that virtually eliminates all the emissions.
But the EPA's changing regulatory environment made that technology simply too expensive. Doe Run says more communication from the EPA could have made all the difference.
Having some insight into the direction the EPA was taking on, in this example, the ambient air standards, and partnering with the EPA in setting those things would have been a much better condition and outcome for companies in our industry to maintain the viability of our businesses.
Lead market analyst Neil Hawks says only time will tell if the gap left by the closure of the Herculaneum smelter can be filled.
Where is the supply going to come from? Because I think globally the lead market is tightening, and we certainly have the market moving into an overall supply-demand deficit over the next 5 years or so.
Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Herculaneum, Missouri.
Up next, a message of hope for the Philippines, how Superbook is helping the youngest victims of Typhoon Haiyan.
The Christian singer Carmen is facing a new health crisis. The famous musician has been battling cancer for almost a year. And in an emergency update on Facebook, he says a new infection could be threatening his life, saying that for the first time, he's really worried. And to see his full post and share how his music has affected your life, you can visit our CBN News Facebook page.
I want to turn overseas now. Millions of Filipino children still feel the trauma from the monster typhoon that struck last November.
And that is why CBN relief teams have been ministering to those little victims. Lucille Toulousan shows us how the ministry is using the Superbook cartoon to reach out to children.
It can be difficult to measure how much these children have been affected by Typhoon Haiyan. The monster storm took their loved ones, friends, homes, and schools. As a form of trauma counseling, the CBN Disaster Relief Team held Superbook screenings in the different villages hit hard by the typhoon.
For a community that doesn't have electric power for more than a month now, no television, no movies, the Superbook screening is a real treat to these children and also to their parents. And not only are they entertained, but they are fed the Word of God that brings them hope and values that they can apply in their lives.
We were walking home when my children saw Superbook on the screen. My children pleaded that we stop by and join the other children. And so now, we come here every night because my children said they want to see Papa Jesus. They are very happy, and I am thankful to Superbook because my children who were traumatized by the typhoon are not afraid anymore. Even I am hopeful again.
Each night, hundreds flocked to watch the animated Bible stories. Police officer Cheryl Morada is overwhelmed at the turnout, with 800 attending in one village. She is happy her station has supported the effort and escorted the CBN team.
We support Superbook because it is really unique from the rest. We get positive feedback from the parents that their children who became afraid of the rain have forgotten all about their fear because of Superbook.
I was crying because I can see the children are very happy. I really felt sorry for them. Because of the storm, they have to suffer so much. I want to thank you personally because I am so touched for how you are helping our children.
The theme song of Superbook truly fits their situation, especially the part in the Filipino language that says, "Help me begin again as I offer my life to you."
I can share what I learned from Superbook to my friends. We should be kind, generous, and obedient to our parents. And we can apply what the song says. Even if we were devastated by the storm, with God's help, we will be able to begin again and rebuild our lives.
It can take years or longer to erase the scars that Haiyan left in the minds of the children. But for every boy and girl attending the Superbook event, one good memory will remain embedded in their hearts. Lucille Talusan, CBN News, Giwan, Samar.
Finally today, newspaper crossword puzzles challenge folks across the country every week.
And now one of their creators is using a special birthday to conquer a challenge of her own. Bernice Gordon is celebrating both turning 100 years old and becoming the first centenarian to have a crossword puzzle published in the New York Times. Gordon began creating puzzles in her 30s, but her first submissions weren't much of a success, and her mother did not think they were a good idea.
And she said, "My child, if you would spend as much money and time with cookbooks instead of crossword puzzles, your family would be happier and better off."
But Gordon pressed on, and her perseverance paid off. The Times printed her first puzzles in the early 1950s, and more than a half century later, she still builds one every morning. Good deal. Keep that brain active.
Yeah, her mind is sharp, you can tell.
It is.
God
she
bless
stumps
her.
us all.
God bless her, and happy belated birthday.
Indeed.
Well, that's going to do it for now on CBN News Today. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com.
Take the time to tell us what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can do that on Facebook or at CBN News on Twitter. Hope you join us again right here next time. Make it a wonderful Wednesday, everybody.